So, this game is going to break down, I think, in a lot of different ways. And I've got a graphic to show you just when it comes to game time and the spread and everything like that. But I think this is a game that a lot of people are dubbing as not going to be competitive. And I really don't see it. And as I break it down, you'll see that information and you'll see why I say that. But I've really got 3 points I want to make prior to actually breaking down this game. And the points I want to make are, one, I think you're looking at a situation that this is not what people anticipated a Super Bowl matchup to look like. And I think I've heard the rhetoric and people keep saying, "Oh, we don't like this Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is not going to be competitive. It's really not a show-stopping Super Bowl." And I think it's because of the mindset people have of what successful NFL teams look like. You look at Mike Vrabel, defensive-minded head coach, right? Mike McDonald's a defensive-minded head coach. And people keep telling me that you got to go get an offensive-minded head coach to coach a young quarterback. Well, Sam Darnold is still young. I think he's 28, 29 years of age, but he's well-traveled. I think he's with his, fifth different team, and a lot of people don't look at Sam Darnold as the poster child of what a Super Bowl champion could look like simply because of the road that he's taken. Drake May, on the other hand, may be in the mold that people are looking for in his second year, coming up second in MVP voting. He's had a good season. They've been a good team. But people look at this as like, you don't have an offensive-minded head coach. You've got two defensive-minded head coaches, and you've got two guys who know how to run a program. Well, why isn't that the norm? Why is it the exception? And I think that's what a lot of people want to know. So when they look at this game, they'll say, man, this is not what I predicted, simply because of what they anticipated game should look like. Secondly, the Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks have what I call organizational indifference. And I think they're indifferent to what other teams are doing in the NFL. If you pay attention to the NFL, if you understand how it's designed, it's a copycat league. People say it all the time. The problem is people copy the wrong people. They copy the wrong blueprint. And again, having a blueprint means one thing, but having the people and the organizational personnel to execute the blueprint is what matters. But they're indifferent to what everybody else is doing. You don't get to this point in the season. You don't get to the pinnacle of the NFL by being like everybody else. Remember, everybody doesn't make it to this point. That's why there are so many organizations that consistently find themselves in the top 10, consistently find themselves running through head coaches, consistently find themselves trying to figure out who their quarterback is or who their right guard is or who their left tackle is, because they don't have the structure and they don't have the top-down opportunities to create that opportunity for themselves. So I think the indifference that the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots both have towards what the NFL is doing is why they're in this position. And lastly, everybody always talks about the GM and the head coach about how they have to be in sync in terms of when they're hired. I've never agreed with that. I think they have to be in sync in terms of their organizational philosophy. I think they need to be in sync in how they see things being done in terms of free agency and in the draft, but they don't have to be hired at the right time and at the same time. Elliott Wolf's the GM of the Patriots. He was hired in 2020 for that position. Vrabel just got there as a head coach in 2025, all right? You got John Schneider was hired in 2010 for the Seahawks. Mike McDonald was hired in 2024. So there are gaps between the GM and the head coach hiring, but they're still on the same page. So you don't have to have the same timeline. Even when it comes to the coach and the quarterback, you don't have to have the same timeline. You just have to have the same mindset. Now, my tail of the tape. So let's go ahead and get to the actual game that I want to break down here. When you look at this tail of the tape, I don't look at this as New England's offensive line against Seattle's offensive line. I break it down and I give the advantage to the whatever team is because how they're looking against the other team, right? Defensive lines don't play defensive lines. They play the other team's offensive line. So if you look at the offensive line, I think Seattle has the edge here. I just think the continuity and the cohesion, they remind me a lot of Indiana's offensive line in college football, who ended up winning the national championship, of course. Like I said, I think there was only one game where they didn't play with the full complement of starters like they had the rest of the season. That doesn't typically happen. Defensive lines, I don't think you can look at a defensive line in football, probably outside of the Houston Texans, and say there's anyone that may be better than the Seattle Seahawks. We know the Giants have a good offensive line and some other teams, but Seattle is second to none there. I'm going to give the Patriots the edge when it comes to running back simply because they have two healthy ones. And again, they're going against a front seven of Seattle that's phenomenal, but I think two healthy running backs matter when it comes to the pass game and the run game. Quarterback, I give the edge to the Patriots. Head coach, I give the edge to Mike Vrabel because he's been in the AFC Championship game before, where he was 2 weeks ago, and he's played in the Super Bowl as a player. And special teams, I give the edge to Seattle just in terms of their kick coverage, Rashid Shaheed as well. While Marcus Jones is great for the Patriots as well, I give the nod to Seattle there. So if you look at this tail of the tape, as I go to some B-roll for you, you'll see that I first of all think this game is going to be very, very competitive. I think it's going to be very, very close. But here's a question I have here. I want to know which team studied for the wrong test. All right, because you've had 2 weeks to look through a year's worth of data on your opponent. You're looking at trends, you're looking at tendencies, you're looking at formations, you're looking at tails. You're gathering all types of data and intel to try to create a game plan for this game. So I want to know who was looking at the wrong test and who was studying the wrong test. Because undoubtedly there's going to be a team that comes out, even though they have an identity, they're going to show you something that you haven't seen before. So now, as always, we're talking about in-game adjustments. And I know I'll be able to tell in the first quarter, if not the first half, who's looking at the wrong test. Okay, you thought you had the answers, but you don't. Now who's going to be able to make the adjustments in game? And I think that's something that Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels have been notorious for. And I'm looking at Clint Kubiak offensively with JSN, the star of Seattle's offense, amongst other very, very strong parts. They've been able to use him in a multitude of ways. But really, at the end of the day, I think this game will come down to a cliche that everybody wants to run away from, in my estimation. That's defense wins championships. Both of these teams have been top 10 defenses. If you look at Seattle, they're 6th in total yards allowed. When you give up less than 300 yards in today's NFL, that's not even bend but don't break. That's basically not bending either. That's how smothering and swarming they are as a defense. Number 1 in EPA. They're second with almost 40% of win rate when it comes to defensive success rate, and they're first in scoring defense. And the Patriots, top 4 in total defense. Their pressure rate is top 10, and their points allowed is 4th. So this is going to be a game, I think, on average, teams run about 70 to 75 plays a game. I think this is going to be cut down a little bit. I think you could easily see each team get about 50 to 55 plays. So now it's about efficiency. You have a team in Seattle who doesn't give up big plays, who plays a lot of too high, and you have an offensive line in New England that struggled in the postseason, and that their left side has 2 rookies. I think Seattle's able to take advantage of that. I think Drake May is going to be huge in this game when it comes to using his legs like he was in the AFC Championship game. And he's going to have to be, same way he was in the divisional round. Like, Drake May's been very good with his legs. I think this game comes down to efficiency because you're going to have to make plays on money downs. And the money down in one drive could be first down. A money drive is always third down, but if you're in third and short, 3rd and 4 or 5, you're just more manageable. I think that's the difference in the game, and I think Seattle gives themselves a better opportunity to be in more manageable money downs. And because of that, I think the Seattle Seahawks beat the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 60 in a game that a lot of people are looking at as if it's not going to be close. And I actually think it'll be one of the best Super Bowls that you've seen in a long while from a coaching perspective and from an execution perspective. But like I said, I think the NFC reigns supreme in Seattle, hoists the Lombardi Trophy once again.